Coming to you live from the second floor of the Duncan Student Center, this is Inside the Irish, the show where we talk about all sports not involving football. Inside the Irish starts now.
Hello, I'm Father John Jenkins, President of the University of Notre Dame, and thank you for watching Shamrock Sports.
On 3rd and 8, drops back, the Irish bring 5, thrown to the left, intercepted, Kyle Hamilton will go, touchdown Notre Dame. 1st and 10 from their own 42. They give to around the right side on the reverse, running free, the 10, the 5, touchdown Notre Dame. Touchdown Notre Dame. This is going to be a touchdown. Touchdown Chris Fink. Touchdown Notre Dame.
Welcome back to Inside the Irish. I'm Chris Frick alongside Jess Jordan, Kieran Cantwell. We're here to talk to you about all sports not involving football. And guys, I mean, anything interesting going on in football this weekend?
Don't think so. I don't think that's really our focus today.
Fantastic. Let's get right into women's soccer. So just starting out talking about some of the trends in women's soccer these past couple of years. Last season, their 2018 season, they started out 4-1, but then they went on a 4-game losing streak, ended up 8-10 on the season. This year started out 6-0, but they've lost their last 2 against Iowa and South Carolina. So starting to notice a little bit of a trend. What can they do to kind of avoid what happened to them last year?
That 2-game losing streak is kind of a dangerous one, and I think what happens to the rest of their season really depends on these next 2 games at Clemson and Pitt. Not just the Clemson game, because Clemson is an ACC opponent. They are ranked. Pitt, on the other hand, is 3-4-1 and are also coming off a 2-loss streak. They're 1-3 away. So I think regardless of how the Irish perform against Clemson, that Pitt game will really be telling. And if that comes out as a win for us, we will have more hope for the rest of the season.
Yeah, as Jess was saying, Clemson will be a tough game on the road, but I look forward to the next 3 home games. As she was saying, against Pitt and then Syracuse and Miami. Those are 3 unranked teams, all winnable games, and I think that it'll be a good bounce-back performance from us.
Yeah, and I think you talk about those last 2 losses. One of them is against South Carolina, who's ranked number 6 in the country. So I think you really can't put too much weight on that just because they're playing a tough schedule. And speaking of their tough schedule, they start their run in the ACC with Clemson tonight. They're at Clemson. Last year in the ACC, they went 4-6. This year, they play 4 ranked ACC opponents. Do you think they can handle the ACC, and what do they need to do to kind of battle back and do better than they did last year? Jess, we'll start with you. Yeah.
Okay, I think this Clemson game will be kind of telling as to how ACC play is going to go this year. However, at the same time, they are coming off a 2-game losing streak. So if they lose against Clemson, I don't think it's the end of the world, again, based on how that Pitt game goes and then heading back into the ACC for more games later on.
Yeah, the ACC, women's soccer, one of the best conferences in the nation. Over half the teams are ranked inside the top 25. But since Notre Dame did join the ACC in 2013, 5 consecutive winning seasons until last year. So this year, it'll be a good test for us to get back on the winning path.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's key to address for this Notre Dame team that's been a point of inconsistency so far this season has been their goalie controversy. So they've had Brooke Littman and they've had Maddie Tyrion. Brooke Littman, 3 starts, only 1 goal allowed. And Tyrion, she started 5 games. In her first 3 starts, no goals allowed, 3 clean sheets. But in her last 2 starts, 5 goals allowed. So who do you think should be the starter for this Notre Dame team going forward? And should they keep swapping back and forth, or do you think they need some consistency here in goalie?
I think stability is going to help the team in the long run. As much as it's been interesting to see both these players battle it out, I think Littman's seniority might win out in the end. She's 83% around there on saves. And again, that seniority factor, I think, plays a big part. She's had more experience on the team playing at the college level, and I think that might be what the rest of our team needs to be able to rally around.
I'm looking more at Maddie Tyrion. She started the last 2 games, giving up 5 goals. Looking at the Iowa game specifically, 2 of those goals were very similar. It was off the corner kick, header into the back post. I look for her to be more aggressive, gain some more confidence, and then hold on to the starting job.
Okay, yeah, and I agree with what you said, Jess, about them needing some stability. I think there needs to be a decision made pretty soon because I think that stability in goalkeeper is key whichever way you go. And I mean, I mentioned in Tyrion, in her last 2 starts, she's allowed 5 goals. But I think it's important to note that she played really well in the first half against Iowa. And then against South Carolina, 3 goals in the first half. So that's where the drop-off has kind of been there. And then as we look around kind of the rest of this team, who needs to step up for them to kind of turn things around, stop this 2-game losing streak, and kind of step up as they head into ACC play?
I think the conversation about who's stepping up really goes hand in hand with the conversation about the goalie controversy. Regardless of which player wins that position, I think having one goalie, one keeper that people can rely on is going to be a rallying point for the rest of the team. Looking at our offense, 9 players have scored already this season. Only 8 players scored in all of last season. So our offense is looking strong. I think our defense and that goal position is where we need to find somebody to rally around and rely on.
Yeah, I'm looking at the offense, keeping up the hot start. Attacking mid, Sammy Fisher, the leading returner from last year. She needs to keep it up, keep the offense going. And then on the defensive end, Jenna Weinbrenner, second season as a starter. She needs to step up as the leader on the defensive end after the 5 goals in the past 2 games. And I think she's capable of doing that.
Yeah, and you guys both touched upon their offense. I mean, they have been really strong so far. They've outshot their opponents 111-49, and they just have to convert more. Only 16 goals on those 111 shots. I think if they can start scoring some more of those goals, getting quality chances, I think they could really kick their offense in gear, and maybe the goalie controversy won't even matter that much. So we move on here to men's soccer. Tuesday night, they went down to Bloomington against number 4 Indiana. And they played a team that knocked them out last year in the playoffs, in the quarterfinals. They came out of Bloomington with a draw, a 1-1 tie. What did you guys see from that game that you liked? Kieran, we'll start with you.
I thought it was a great game played by senior goalkeeper Duncan Turnbull. He had 6 saves, only 1 goal allowed. He had a really nice diving save right after halftime. And I think that he was the main staple that kept us close with Indiana there.
I agree with that point. Notre Dame was able to hold Indiana to 1-1, but Indiana had 25 shots on goal, so that says a lot about their performance on the defensive side. Notre Dame, on the other hand, only had 8 shots on goal, and it gives them a better percentage, 1 out of 8 instead of 1 out of 25, but I think we need to be more aggressive in the future.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there, and just important to note, Ben Giacobello scored his first career goal on Tuesday night against Indiana. That was big for them. And in terms of what I saw, I really liked how Mohamed Omar, he controlled the middle of the field. I mean, he looked really good against Denver a couple weeks ago. He's really been stepping up. I think he's an important player to watch as Notre Dame goes forward here. And they go forward tonight on the road in Chapel Hill. Notre Dame's football team, not the only one with a ranked opponent on the road this weekend. North Carolina tonight, ranked number 11th in the country. What are you looking for in that game? Who needs to step up for Notre Dame? Kieran, we'll start with you.
I think the key player for Notre Dame is sophomore forward Jack Lynn. He has scored a goal in 4 out of the 5 games so far, topping his total of 3 goals from all last year. He's been playing really well, so I look to him to keep it up.
Yeah, last time Notre Dame played at UNC, they came out with a 2-1 win, but UNC this season is 3-1-2. I'm looking at Felician Dumas, the captain, to really take on that leadership role, lead the team during the game, and kind of have a rallying point for them again. And then going back to Giacobello, who scored against Indiana, that was his first goal, his first career goal. And he didn't start the game. He came in the 37th minute, and within 3 minutes, that goal was scored. So I think that shows a lot of promise for the rest of the season as far as his performance and how he'll do.
And you mentioned the rest of the season. A really tough road forward going for Notre Dame as they start out tonight with number 11 North Carolina, still ahead on their schedule, number 5 Virginia, number 15 Duke, number 17 Virginia Tech, and number 1 Wake Forest, who actually just got upset by JMU. Jess, you're pretty happy about that one.
Did.
But you know, we talk about that tough schedule going forward. They had to deal with it last year. They have to deal with it pretty much every year in this tough ACC conference. So what does Coach Riley need to do to kind of keep this team locked in over this difficult stretch of games?
Riley mentioned in a press conference after the Indiana game that as a team, we weren't as sharp as we wanted to be. That's a pretty vague statement, but I think it does kind of encapsulate how men's soccer has been playing this year. They're doing the right things, but they're not quite putting all the steps together, working as a team. They really need that cohesion to be able to follow through on what they're starting.
Yeah, with a lot of tough games coming up, I think it's important to keep a one game at a time mentality. And I'm especially looking at a 2-game set mid-October. We play at home against Duke and at Virginia Tech later in the week. Both those teams are in the top 25, so that's going to be a big stretch there at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think something that Coach Riley has really done well is he's showed the depth of this team off. He's allowed a lot of players to play. In Denver last week, He took Duncan Turnbull out of the game. He started Keegan McLaughlin in goal. I think that kind of coaching decision really gives members of your team confidence. Keegan McLaughlin had a clean sheet against Denver. So I think they can trust a lot of players to be put in these big games. They've got a lot of strength with their senior leadership. Felicien Dumas, you mentioned, Ina Sharis, Jack Casey, those guys, really strong senior and grad student leadership. And then they've also got a lot of young guys. You mentioned Jacqueline, another guy, Mohamed Abdelnadi. He's looked really good for them so far, only a freshman. So I think that combination of things really gives them a lot of confidence going forward. And Coach Riley has done a good job. In terms of just showing that depth off. So we move from men's soccer onto women's volleyball. Women's volleyball on Wednesday night, Michigan came into town. We always like beating Michigan, and we did in a 5-set thriller. What did you guys see from that game that you liked? We were down 2-1, two sets to 1. I mean, what kind of resilience did you see from this Notre Dame team? Kieran, we'll start with you.
Yeah, Michigan, one of the better teams. They recently dropped out of the top 25, but they are still a very, very quality team. And it kept us going, a 3-game win streak. That's a big confidence booster going forward. And then looking forward to playing them again later in the week.
Yeah, Jess?
Yeah, that 5-set game, going in and winning the first set and losing the next 2 is a really hard spot to come back from. It's really hard to regain momentum from 2 lost sets right there. The second set, they lost 27-29, close game, went to over 25 points. Third set, though, they were down 20-25. So the fact that they were able to go into that 4th set of the game and win it, 25-23, that's really impressive, that they were able to regain that momentum, come together as a team, and do the work that needed to get done. And
you mentioned that 20-25 third set. That was the least close set in that game. Every other set was decided by 2 points, which just shows kind of how much fight this Notre Dame team had in them. And then Kieran, were there any players in that game that you saw that you really liked their performances?
Yeah, I was looking at Charlie Niego. She had 19 kills and 4 aces. So got some big-time points for us throughout the later sets. And I also looked at the libero, Madison Cruzado. She led the team with 21 digs. She's been playing really well as of late, leading the back row, playing some good defense as of late.
I thought Cruzado also had a really impressive performance. In addition to her, Zoe Nunez, right now she's 3rd in the conference with averaging 10.68 assists per set, which is just an incredible stat. I think she's doing really well in helping our team get done what needs to be done.
Yeah, per set, that's a wild stat. She had 50 assists on Wednesday night, and you guys both mentioned Cruzado. She's one of the smaller players on the team, only listed at 5'4", but I was watching that game on Wednesday night, and she can cover a lot of ground on that court. She kept a lot of rallies alive that really had no right to be alive. They should have been Michigan points, but she just kept them going, and it was really impressive to watch. 3 players on Notre Dame had double-doubles: Charlie Niego, Caroline Muth, Zoe Nunez, and then Sydney Bent also looked really good. She's obviously got a very powerful kill. So those 3 players, those 4 players, 5 players, a lot of good players on this volleyball team. They look great. And then, Jess, you mentioned before, or it might have been Kieran, one of you guys mentioned that we play Michigan again on Sunday night, but this time it's in Ann Arbor. So what are you guys looking from that game? What do you want to see out of that game? What does Notre Dame need to do to take 2 from Michigan and 1 on the road?
I think Notre Dame just needs to clean up their act a little bit. Looking purely at stats, Notre Dame leads Michigan a little bit in errors, 24-20, still pretty close, and trails them a little bit in kills, 60-67. Based on those stats, Michigan, you could say, looks better, but Notre Dame is coming out ahead in stats overall throughout the season. Kills per set, Notre Dame's leading 12-7 versus Michigan, leading against their own opponents so far, but Michigan is averaging 13.2, lower than their opponents. So compared to each other, kind of a toss-up, but compared to their respective opponents thus far, one's doing better, one's doing worse. So kind of a toss-up there at stats. But I think if Notre Dame is able to cut down on those errors relative to Michigan, they will be able to do better this coming Sunday.
Yeah, similar to what Jess was saying, Notre Dame just needs to stay fundamentally sound, replicate what got the win on Wednesday, and repeat on Sunday. It is hard to beat the same team twice in a row, especially on the road with the atmosphere and everything, but riding high on a 3-game win streak, confidence is high, and I think Notre Dame has what it takes to.
Yeah, and Notre Dame in that game, they had 24 errors. Michigan had 20, not that big of a difference, but when we talk about how close those sets were, those 4 errors make a big difference. So we'll see what happens on Sunday night, what transpires, see if it's another close one. I think it will be, and we'll see who can pull it out. Moving on to Notre Dame golf. Notre Dame golf last weekend won the Badger Invitational. They won by 14 strokes with a score of 22 under par. Hunter Ostrom finished 11 under par, tying the second lowest 54-hole score in program history. So really impressive from him. But then on Tuesday night, Notre Dame just went and got better. They won the Wyndham Memorial Championship down at Northwestern, beating 13 teams with a score of 10 under par. It was their first time winning back-to-back tournaments with more than 10 teams since 1999 and 2000. Really impressive from their golf team. We'll see what they can do going forward. They have the Inverness Intercollegiate Tournament next week in Toledo, so we'll see what happens from them. Moving on to hockey. Hockey starts in a couple weeks. We'll start to cover that more in the coming weeks on Inside the Irish. But yesterday, Notre Dame named their hockey captains for the year. They have Cal Burke, Tori Dello, and Cale Morris. So what does that mean for this team? What does that kind of leadership mean for this Notre Dame hockey team? Kieran, we'll start with you.
Yeah, that's a really good, experienced group of captains there. I think that they'll be able to get the younger guys in the flow of things, start the season off strong, and get us back to deep in the tournament by the end of the year.
Jess?
Kind of along the same lines, all three of these senior guys, of course, they have great stats on the ice, but what I really want to talk about is their other accomplishments. Cal Burke, senior, two-time All-American Big Ten honoree. I'm just going to go down this list. Compton Family Leadership and Service Award 2019, Notre Dame's Big Ten Sportsmanship honoree, Hobie Baker fan vote nominee. He just seems like the kind of guy that his teammates are going to want to rally around, not just because of his performance, but because of his character. And as a captain, I think that says a lot about him and where he's going to be able to take the team this year. Tori Dello and Cale Morris, similar allocations from their past 3 years playing for the Irish, and I think that's really great for our program.
Yeah, I completely agree with what both of you said. I think that leadership is really important for this team, and I think there's a lot of good things to come this year from Notre Dame's hockey team. Finally, we'll talk a little bit about women's and men's basketball. Like hockey, both of them starting up in a few weeks. Again, we'll be covering that more in the coming weeks. But I just want to hear from both of you. What is one thing you're looking forward to from either the men's or the women's basketball team? Jess, we'll start with you.
Looking at women's basketball, of course, they lost their 5 starters last year, and it is going to be a rebuilding year, but we have 2 new freshmen. I'm excited to see how they fit in with the rest of the team and where they can take us as they're able to grow as a team, as a program in the next season.
Kieran?
Yeah, for the men's basketball team, last year we struggled in the ACC, but we returned John Mooney, averaged a double-double in the ACC last year, TJ Gibbs, our leading scorer, and then what I really want to look at is the development of the younger players. Last year we had 4 freshmen, all from the ESPN Top 100, Prentice Hub, Nate Leshevsky, Dane Goodwin, and Robbie Carmody. I want to see how Mike Bray can develop them and turn them into some role players this year and get us back into the tournament. Yeah,
it'll be certainly interesting to see. And Jess, you touched upon Notre Dame women's team losing all 5 of their starters from last year's team that made it to that national championship game. I'm really interested to see how these inexperienced players are able to step up. You know, Abby Prohaska, Michaela Vaughn. It'll be interesting to see how these girls can kind of step into the role that they've been being taught for this last year or two. I think that's going to be super interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of good things to come from both men's and women's basketball. As we start to wrap things up here on Inside the Irish, Kieran, any final thoughts?
I enjoyed myself on the show. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming, Jess.
Wishing volleyball best of luck on Sunday.
Yes.
Hoping soccer, everything goes well for both teams there, and looking forward to our next coming sports later on this season.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think you guys really covered it. So for Kieran Cantwell and Jess Jordan, I'm Chris Frick. Thank you for tuning in to Inside the Irish. We will be back next week here in the Duncan Student Center.
All night.